his most aggressive speech in years. Just weeks before Russia's general election, the country's president suddenly unveiled an array of new nuclear weapons, including a missile he says could reach almost any point in the world unchallenged.
Several points of the renewed US nuclear strategy, which lower the threshold of using nuclear weapons, provokes great concern. You can reassure anyone in any way behind the scenes, but if we read what is written, and what is written is that it can be launched in response to an attack with conventional weapons or even a cyber threat.
Putin's remarks to lawmakers come as NATO and Russia are deadlocked in a massive build-up of troops in Eastern Europe, levels not seen since the Cold War. And using video presentations, the president said his new weapon would be difficult for any anti-missile system to intercept, rendering NATO's batteries in the region useless. He also mentioned underwater nuclear drones and supersonic and laser weapons.
The Russian president this morning used his annual State of the Union address to warn Washington against militarily messing with Russia, revealing a range of new weapons, threatening to turn tensions with Washington into a new Cold War that could get hot. President Vladimir Putin's message to Washington was loud and clear.
The US global missile defense systems are mainly against ballistic missiles. This is the core of our nuclear deterrent. This is why Russia has been developing a modestly priced but extremely effective system to defeat missile defense. Our defense ministry is working with weapons manufacturers on a new ICBM Sarmat. This system will replace our older missiles from the Cold War. With a payload of 200 tons, it's hard to intercept. It has the capability to beat missile defense systems.
And I am not bluffing.
Низколетящая, малозаметная крылатая ракета, несущая ядерную боевую часть, с практически неограниченной дальностью, непредсказуемой траекторией полета и возможностью обхода рубежей перехвата, является неуязвимой для всех существующих и перспективных систем, как ПРО, так и ППО.
Russia this morning is flexing its military muscle, unveiling a new line of nuclear weapons that it claims can reach almost anywhere in the world and would render American defense systems useless.
Нас никто не слушал.
Saying nobody listened to us, so listen to us now. The new weapons include a nuclear-powered underwater drone and a nuclear-powered cruise missile, difficult to detect and Russia claims impossible to intercept. But Putin says that Russia is not the aggressor, blaming the new arms race on America's decision to pull out of the 1972 anti-ballistic missile treaty and for building new bases close to Russia's borders. Now, Putin also said that Moscow would regard a nuclear attack on its allies as an attack on Russia itself and would immediately respond. And Savannah, this comes as President Donald Trump set the date for his military campaign for next Veterans Day, that is November 11th. Both sides seemingly set on flexing their military muscle as tensions continue to mount.
How are U.S. officials responding to this and as he's saying it, invincible weapons?
Well, the Pentagon spokeswoman said just a short time ago that the U.S. was not surprised by the development of these new weapons and had already taken them into account in assessing the threat posed by Russia.
President Putin said today that he has weapons that are invincible and able to strike U.S. anywhere. Do you have any reaction?
We're not surprised by the statement, and the American people should rest assured that we are fully prepared.
The fact is that the U.S. has never had a defense against Russian ballistic missiles. So the fact that Russia is adding another type of missile, a cruise missile, to its nuclear arsenal still doesn't change the fact that the U.S. is defenseless against Russian missiles. The U.S. could always retaliate against a Russian strike in a way that would wipe out Russia, and that's the so-called balance of terror, which has existed ever since the first Cold War between the U.S. and the then Soviet Union. And these new weapons don't change that same balance.
You know, Putin says that these weapons are essentially undetectable. Does the Pentagon agree with that, too?
Well, certainly an underwater drone, which is essentially a mini submarine with a nuclear warhead on it, would be very difficult to detect if it approached the U.S. in a stealthy undersea manner. And if it were targeted at a large port or naval base, say Norfolk or San Diego, it would cause immense havoc and destruction. But you could say the same thing about Russian ballistic missiles, which would also be targeted against all major ports and naval bases. The cruise missile is a low, slow-flying, unmanned airplane. The U.S. has used cruise missiles for years now in the various wars in the Middle East. The difference here is that Putin said that this missile is powered by nuclear energy, which in effect gives it an unlimited range. So it could fly a very low profile, taking evasive maneuvers, and it would be hard to detect. There's no question about it.
So what we're saying then is, from the reality today, given our past practice, is that from 2020 going forward, Russia is in a much more modernized position of acuity than the United States, and that will occur over the next 20 to 30 years.
Of all the nuclear-armed states in the world, Russia has the most weapons. Roughly 7,000 strategic nuclear warheads. 1,500 are on missiles, ready to be fired from military bases. 4,500 are stockpiled. 2,500 are retired, waiting to be dismantled. It's a major reduction from the Cold War years. 40,000 nukes had been amassed by the time the Soviet Union was nearing collapse.
But the agreements which produced such significant disarmament are under strain. The United States unilaterally withdrew from the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty in 2002. And recently, Washington and Moscow have accused each other of violating another cornerstone agreement of the nuclear age, the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty.
When Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev signed their names in 1987, they outlawed all land-based missiles that could strike targets between 500 and 5,500 kilometers. But Russia and the US both say each other's cruise missile systems, such as Russia's Caliber class here, have been given secret updates so they don't comply with the INF treaty. Vladimir Putin says Russia has only been developing air and sea-based intermediate-range missiles.
We believe that we have only balanced out the situation. If someone does not like it and wishes to withdraw from the treaty, for example, our American partners, our response will be immediate. I would like to repeat this warning: immediate and reciprocal.
Putin wanted to make Russia a world power again and recover the status lost to the West 20 years earlier with the collapse of the Soviet Union. But in order to achieve that, he first needed to reconfigure his own power structures. He shut out liberals and surrounded himself with hardliners. Many were either former KGB agents like him or loyal oligarchs. His friend Vladimir Yakunin, a former KGB officer, wealthy businessman, and pious creditor, joined the inner circle that unofficially advises the Russian president.
The Russian leader stated the country's doctrine is purely defensive in response to countries like the United States.
Any use of nuclear weapons against Russia and its allies, small or medium, or any strength will be perceived as a nuclear attack on our country. The response will be immediate and with all due consequences.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says that he got nuclear weapons that are invincible.